Let's get started. Hello, folks. Welcome to the first session beyond the keynote of the CALI conference. I don't know if you noticed, we have these sessions clustered where we got three groups of speakers talking on a somewhat similar. We tried to stack people together so that there was some coherence to this. Any mistakes are ours, not them. In this case, we've got Michael Murphy talking on hybrid learning. Oh, no, I clicked away from the title. Hybrid learning for hybrid practice. Michael is at the University of Pennsylvania, Carey Law School. We've got Zoom Like a Pro with Elisabeth Steele Hutchison. And we've got Game Changer Tips to help you sustain student engagement with Pat Baia and Jason Fiske from the Touro Law Center and UCLA School of Law, respectively. So, Michael, I think we've got a video queued up for you. So, Tobias, go ahead and hit play.
So hello, CALIcon. My name is Mike Murphy, and I am the lecturer and supervisor in the Entrepreneurship Legal Clinic at the University of Pennsylvania Carey Law School. And I am here to do a presentation towards the theme of the conference, which is the distance ed genie is out of the bottle. And this presentation is more about how the distance legal practice genie is out of the bottle. And in order to provide a perspective on that, I thought I'd offer my own perspective, but then I thought my perspective isn't nearly as interesting as the perspective of my students who are joining me today from all around the United States, and like a true East Coaster, all around the
Oops, we lost the video. Looks like we lost Tobias as well. Oh boy. Technical problems are bound to happen at any CALI conference. While Tobias is queuing the video back up, we'll give him a chance to do that.
Yeah, it was just getting to the good stuff, really. I mean, the pyro was about to go off.
There we are. Tobias is back. So one of the very early CALI conferences, all the bathrooms broke down at the same time. Not true story.
So hello, CALIcon. My name is Mike Murphy, and I am the lecturer and supervisor in the Entrepreneurship Legal Clinic at the University of Pennsylvania Carey Law School. And I am here to do a presentation towards the theme of the conference, which is the distance ed genie is out of the bottle. And this presentation is more about how the distance legal practice genie is out of the bottle. And in order to provide a perspective on that, I thought I'd offer my own perspective, but then I thought my perspective isn't nearly as interesting as the perspective of my students who are joining me today from all around the United States, and like a true East Coaster, all around the United States means people from both coasts and nowhere in between. So I have with me students who graduated from the University of Pennsylvania Carey Law School in 2020 with JDs, but who took my clinic, the Entrepreneurship Legal Clinic, at certain points in their law school career. And so I'll introduce them briefly, and then I'll talk about why I picked them, and then we'll go into our session, which is all about what law schools should be doing differently to prepare their graduates for what will be a hybrid or perhaps even remote legal practice, because I feel as if that kind of lawyering will become prevalent in the future. And so joining me today are, starting clockwise from my screen, is Jack Vanderford, who is at Latham and Watkins in Orange County, California. Jack is in the corporate department. Hello, Jack. Then Edwin Bogert, who is from Kramer and Levin in New York City, and he is in corporate finance in his first year there. Hello, Edwin.
Hi.
Rana Ozer is at White and Case in New York. She is a JD 2020 from Penn, but also an LLM from Penn as well, and she's in the corporate department at White and Case. Hello, Rana.
Hi.
And then Greer Wellstead is in Philadelphia, but working in the Vincent and Elkins office in New York, and she is in finance and capital markets in her first year. So hello, Greer.
Hi.
Awesome. And so this group represents a really specific cross-section of legal practice, which is to say that they're all working at law firms and all in their first year. But they have this shared perspective that I thought was going to be really interesting for people to appreciate, which is to say that in the last 2 years, these young lawyers were law students in person, then they were law students remotely. In the meantime, they had an in-person summer associateship, and now they're all practicing remotely for law firms. So in 2 years, they had both in-person and remote law school and in-person and remote practice. And so I thought it would be really interesting to capture their perspective at this hopefully very unique time. So, starting with the first question, which is really, what is it like to practice remotely, right? And how is it different from practicing in person? Realizing that, of course, you have somewhat of a small sample size. You've only been doing it for a couple of months. So I'm going to start with Edwin there and say, what's it like to practice remotely versus practicing in person?
I think it feels isolating, obviously, in a lot of intuitive ways, but it's not all bad. I think being able to be in your own space and dedicate yourself to the long hours that it takes to get the work done, in many ways, it's easier than being in person because there's fewer distractions and you can really bury your head in your work. And in that way, it makes, I think, at least me more productive and happy to put in the long hours that this work demands.
Interesting. And I know, Rana, when we talked about this previously, you had mentioned that something like that as well. Did you want to sort of add on that?
Yeah, I was mentioning if having more control over your time, because anyways, corporate work itself by its nature is cyclical, and even during one day, it's sometimes more busy, sometimes not. And when you're in the office, you're in the office the whole day. And even if you work during the night, you don't it's a little more predictable, more controllable from your own side. If you're at the space of your home, that you can manage the workflow more from your own perspective. While if you're at the office, then anyways, you're at the office the whole day. So it's, even if you don't work, you're still there, so you don't get to relax. And at home, maybe you work at night, but you get to relax a little more during the day sometimes, and sometimes not. So it's a little more.
Great. Do you feel like sort of since you all had to, in some senses, make the transition to remote law schooling to some extent, at least for a little while, did you pick anything up while you were remote law schooling that's helping you be a remote lawyer now? I'll throw that one out to you, Jack.
Definitely. I mean, just I think more so the soft skills of using the technology, and the one semester that we all had in working remote made the transition to actually practicing a little bit easier, and knowing how to do Zooms and even things like this. So I think that was probably the most helpful, and also just kind of the things that are always important, like communication skills, just become that much more important when you're working remotely. And so being able to focus on that during that one semester of remote work and kind of emphasize that was super helpful.
Yeah, awesome. And then last but not least, anyway, Greer. So yeah, sort of the same question, right? What about being a remote law student has sort of helped you be a remote lawyer, if anything?
Yeah, I would definitely echo what Jack said. Being able to communicate effectively virtually is incredibly helpful, because at least in the corporate group, you're working with people all day long. You're getting calls all day long, at least when you're busy. And being comfortable enough to send a Skype chat or send an email or pick up the phone and call is incredibly important. And so knowing how all that technology works is really helpful.
Yeah, it's funny what you're all sort of mentioning. It's not so much like, oh, we should be teaching contracts differently, but we should be emphasizing more how to talk to people, and what sort of the social norms are and business norms are in a remote environment. And I can tell you from my perspective, that's a little bit of a challenge because they're being figured out right now. They're still evolving, right? So. Can you think of curriculum changes that law schools might make? I'm thinking of the 3 years that you spent, or Rana, I know you might have spent a little more time in law school. What is it that law school has sort of offered that it could offer more or less of that will help you, or would have helped you more in the remote environment? And here I'll start with Jack again.
Definitely. I haven't really thought of too many things just based on practicing remotely that substantively law school should change. I do think that law school does focus on kind of litigation work, and when you're a corporate lawyer, law school does have a lot of transactional classes as well. But kind of a lot of the things that you learn in your first few months of working as a corporate lawyer is kind of getting a feel for the different transactional documents and things like that. So that I think would be a helpful kind of substantive difference. But on top of that, just like I was saying, maybe a bigger focus on communication skills and taking more ownership over your own learning in terms of asking questions and being which is a big part of law school as well. But kind of focusing on all those things are good things, I think, for law schools.
But yeah, Greer, what should law school do differently or better or more or less of?
I definitely think the most helpful things were when professors would give like practical real world examples of like how you would see this. Like I had a very good M&A professor who would actually like show us like an M&A document and like, or just like show us what an S1 is for, that you had to file to do an IPO for with the SEC. And that was incredibly helpful because, so many times I have already like gotten a document that I was supposed to do something with. And I'm like, I have no idea what this is. And I need to learn exactly what this is. And like, there's just so much of law school that teaches you because we're all on a curve and there's really only one test, but like if you don't know what something is, you're failing. When right now, like it's much more helpful to like be in a space where, me not knowing anything is completely fine. And and to be more comfortable understanding these are the ways that I get to a place where I understand what this is. And like those skills are important.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest changes for me personally, and it may be something that's for you, is that I can no longer walk down the hall and talk to someone who knows how to do my job as well or better than I can. And that was something as a junior associate, I was incredibly valuable to me. I can only walk down the hall and talk to my wife, who will tell me to get out of her office because she's trying to work. And so that, Rana, I'll turn it over to you a little bit. What else should law school do differently or better to help you be ready for the remote environment or hybrid environment?
Yeah, I just wanted to build up on what you said recently as well. So maybe not as much substantive but in terms of being able to, like, since I've started remote as well, I haven't been able to walk into someone's office and just ask for help or maybe ask for more detail into what they've asked me to do. And I realized as a replacement to that, using the instant messaging like apps within the firm was really helpful. And so I was thinking, for instance, for school to law school, since maybe right before the class or right after the class, going to the professor and asking something which you didn't want to maybe necessarily email for because it's more formal and everything, but just wanted to ask more like informal. So if there were some instant messaging apps or like a format that you could use within law schools that you could like easily for more informal things ask the professors or even like within the students. So that would be really helpful. And I get the go maybe law firm setting in that remote.
Yeah, it's really interesting, right? The technology has made collaboration, easier and more difficult at the same time, right? Edwin, similar question, right? There's lots of law school people listening. What do we have to tell them about what to do potentially differently to help you practice in a remote environment or hybrid environment?
I would definitely say that the number one difference between remote and in-person work is the social angle. It becomes a very big challenge to manage your own work, the people that you're responsible for, or the people who are managing you. And I think that the way to make that easier for law students is to put more of a focus on experiential internship, or clinic opportunities in law school, like getting students into a situation in which they actually have to learn to work with clients and keep people happy and meet deadlines and coordinate with other people, which is like the logistical issue that I think all of us are working through right now. So I think the extent to which schools can place more of an emphasis on actual experiential stuff, I think it would benefit students and help them get prepared for what we're doing now, which is trying to do all of that logistical work in a way in which none of us really have that much experience doing, even after a year.
Right. Yeah. I mean, so much of experiential legal education, and I know we talked about this when we were all working together. It's not so much about knowing exactly what it is you're supposed to be doing at any given moment, but knowing how to figure it out and being confident figuring it out. And like, so I'll start with you, Jack. What about your time in Penn has sort of come back to you in practice and helped you do what you do?
Definitely. I think I was fortunate enough to have an awesome professor for my my clinic program that I participated in, who prepared me and made sure that I kept organized. And like I was saying, communication becomes so much more important. Although of course it's always important when you're practicing remotely. And so kind of staying prepared and making sure you send updates to your supervisor that are clear, and kind of keeping yourself organized at the same time as keeping your supervisor organized was something that I did during the clinic, and that I feel like popped up every day basically. So
that's great. That makes me very happy to hear, Jack. Thanks very much. Totally unprompted, by the way. But all right, so Edwin, sort of final thoughts.
Yeah, not to get too cheesy, but I also had a throwback to the LC a week or two ago. I was assembling a closing binder, and I thought about, I think you actually said at one point you're gonna have to get used to compiling these. And I was like, wow, he was right. Like my previous comment, I think experiential work is really important, and it was valuable to get a sneak peek of some of the lawyering I would end up doing after graduation. Then, so everybody take clinics if you can. There are law students in the crowd.
I love it. Excellent. And Rana, final thoughts.
Yeah, I don't want to just repeat everyone, but clinic was the most replicable like experience I had in law school to my law firm experience working in the corporate department. So I would say, just if you want to do corporate, definitely do a clinic. And also maybe like if the law school continues to be remote, turning the video on in even like lecture classes, I would say is a good advice. Maybe just so that you stay more concentrated in the class, in the lecture. And if you just turn off the video, it's not as concentrated.
That's great. Thanks so much. That's a good tip. And Greer, final thoughts.
I would say the same. Clinic is one of the most important things I feel like that I did in law school. Even just there's like a large and also small learning curve to like the things that you do every single day as a corporate attorney, like running a red line, or like even an email really can be work product, and just being able to compile those and like put those things together. Clinic will teach you how to do that, and it's incredibly helpful and important, especially when we're remote. And as you said, like it's really just us in a room.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for providing all of your perspective. I really appreciate it. I wish we had more time, but time limits are what they are. So thanks very, very much. Good luck in your work, and don't be a stranger. Awesome.
thanks, Professor Murphy.
Thanks, and bye. Say bye to the conference, everybody. All right.
All right, thanks, Tobias. Thanks, Michael. Let's go. Let's save the questions for the end for all three. I don't see any questions popping up. So Zoom like a pro with Elisabeth Hutchison. Go for it.
Thank you so much, everybody. I'm so glad to see you, and thanks so much for the intro. And we're going to move really quickly. We've got 15 minutes here, and I want everyone to feel a little bit more like a pro when we're done. I'm going to share my screen, which is typically a kiss of death, but I promise you that I have created something pretty special. And so here we go. All right. So most of you we'll have an option to look at either me really, really big or your slides really, really big. If you'd like to kind of be able to toggle between both, I would suggest making a quick change to your view options. So for those of you who are joining Zoom on a computer, if you would look for the 3 dots here, right? Or there should be a view options box, and I recommend side-by-side speaker view, right? And when you do that, you can make me look big or my slides look big. But here we go, and I'm so excited to be here and to see all of you. So I don't know about you, my experience in Zoom has been that it's really difficult to pay attention and to take in new information. And in part, my own experience is it's because it's so visible, so visual, and I'm really looking at everyone. And because I'm so busy looking, the listening is a little bit more difficult. So I've collected some tips from news broadcasters, beauty contestants, vloggers, YouTube gamers, right, to help us kind of keep our focus on our learners, right, and our listeners. So I'm going to give you a bunch of tips in 15 minutes. Please, I don't want this to be anxiety provoking in any way. I want you to have good fun with it. Whatever applies, grab hold of it. If not, let it be water off of a duck's back. I'd like us to focus today on making a connection and engaging our audience and learners. All right, so I'm going to leave you with 5 lessons, right? Number 1, sound. The we can't hear you. Number 2, where to put your head. 3, the importance of making eye contact. 4, finding your light, right? And 5, cleaning up your act. So here we go. We'll start with number 1. We can't hear you, right? One thing that I quickly realized in my own Zoom journey was that the sound was much more important to me than the visuals. And so I wanted to, I thought it would be quite powerful to do a little demo with you today. So right now, you are hearing me through my Jabra Evolve headset, right? It's about $100. I'm not selling anything, but I just want to kind of give you a sense of the sound quality. So this is kind of my go-to, especially because I can't control the other humans and animals that I live with. But I want to show you what happens if I use the built-in microphone in my Logitech Brio. And so I'm actually going to be looking to see if some of my panelists can nod or give me a reaction. You should be able to hear me okay volume-wise, right? But my sense is that there's a distance. Thank you, John, right? There's like a distance, like I'm talking to you at the back of a classroom. Thank you so much, Mike Murphy, right? And finally, I'm going to go and introduce you to Lady Gaga. She's my podcasting style microphone. And so let me see if I can find her. And she doesn't always come out to play. And it looks like actually she might not be willing to play with me today. But I'm going to bring her out of the frame to show you, right? Imagine what we might listen to if we heard you through my podcasting microphone. I'm going to go back to my headset, and I'm going to say that the sound has an incredible impact on our ability to focus. Right? When I use a powerful microphone, when she cooperates, what I find is that she's so powerful that she picks up those elements of my Zoom experience that I can't control. So sounds in the next room, people preparing a meal, the dryer in my condo, right? I'm cycling off. So one thing you want to think about in kind of your Zoom experience is your focus should be on being heard and making yourself understood. I also want to say that I can see the chat bubbling and I love it, but I can't read the chat and present at the same time. So I'll circle back to any questions that I haven't answered after we're done here. I do want to show you a little trick. I like tricks, and I especially like tricks if they're free. So I don't have a sense of how many of you are using this, but I rely on KRISP, KRISP.ai. It's a free app that works with Google Meet, Skype. You've got a video conferencing software, it works. And I think, again, I'm going to try to do is show you a little bit of a demo. So I'm going to bring some bells, and I'm going to be looking at John's face. John, can you hear my bells? Awesome. So a little bit of Salvation Army action. When I toggle in Zoom to my KRISP microphone, right, I should not have them. Is that right, John? No, this is great. This is a stand-in for my family, right? My neighbor's construction, and it's free. If I leave on my KRISP microphone after it's suppressed that background noise, however, it will degrade my audio quality. So I'm gonna go back to my headset mic. But if I've left you with nothing, I recommend the KRISP app, right? Oh gosh, I love it that people are already taking notes to write it down. You'll also have access to my slides. And I think what I'd like to invite everyone here to do is to think about, your classes, your presentations as your own little Zoom films. And what I've found is that I can actually produce better audio quality by simply warming up my voice. And I absolutely love this 7-minute public speaking warm-up lecture at the University of Maryland Business School. So I recommend it to you. Right. All right. We're done. We're number 2. It's all about where to put your head on Zoom. Okay. And it's interesting. We might not recognize ourselves as experts, but we are. Each of us are expert at looking at people in boxes. We have some set under expectations of where people should belong. Right. And we are trained, whether it's Fox or CNN or MSNBC, right? We expect people to be centered in their Zoom boxes, right? And I want to teach you really quick free tricks today to kind of find your inner Don Lemon, your inner Rachel Maddow. So here we go, right? These news broadcasters are applying the rule of thirds taken from cinematography, right? Their eyes are almost always going to be at the third median, right? If you put a 3x3 grid over the screen, right? I've done that here, right? Turns out when we're not there, when we're here, right? Or if we're here, right? It's actually off-putting. And it turns out, like science shows, it's more difficult for us to pay attention. We're like, wait, when is the person going to come back to where I expect the person to be? So an easy way to do this is the behind the scenes from Jonathan Capehart's Twitter feed, right? Raising your laptop to eye level, right? Or your webcam to eye level, right? So that you're kind of making this connection. Okay, and give yourself 4 fingers of headspace. And so I see some folks whose fingers I can see. So I'm going to look at John. If you'll give me 4 fingers, this is the 4-finger salute, right? These 4 fingers, there's a raging argument whether it should be 2 or 4. But I will say that either one, right, will give you kind of I love it. Thank you so much, Michael Murphy. Like this will give you kind of that broadcaster look. And I like it because if you have hands and most of us take them with us everywhere. So when I'm Zooming from my office or my home office, right, I can make this, oh, yep, see, there you go, John. I see that. I see what you're doing there, right? Okay, on to lesson number 3. How wild is that? And did she just pull out a fan? Yes, she did. And not just because I'm warm. It turns out that we really have to, about every 8 minutes, change something up, whether it's our cadence, our sound, our virtual background, right? Even something as surprising, right, as using a fan is enough to say, wait, what's happening? And to kind of re-engage us. Okay, so number 3, I want to make sure you make eye contact. And this is really tricky. It requires lots of practice. Okay. If we don't look into the camera, if we're looking at, let's say, data on a spreadsheet or our slide deck, right, our audience notices. So these are images taken from Room Rater, my favorite Twitter account. You'll see Dr. Fauci, right? He's got a great Zoom posture, right? Lovely background, great lighting, but he's not connecting with the audience. Here we have Greta Thunberg looking straight past that laptop into the webcam. Right? And we feel like we're in the kitchen with her. And I'm going to give you some quick free tips on how to do that in your own Zoom life, right? Look at that. Oh, she's using the 4 fingers. Love it. Love it. 1, really, 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 really look into the camera. Okay, this is a picture of my own situation right here. I'm using a slightly different peacock today, but let me see if I can show her to you. Right, this is a tape flag, if you can see her on the top of my screen. Right, I decorate it differently every couple of weeks to kind of keep it attractive, and so don't become habituated. And the key is to give your webcam eyes. Right, so if I've got eyes, sometimes I'll use googly eyes like these. Right. Sometimes I'll just take a yellow sticky and draw some eyes on a sticky. I'm so glad John is laughing, but let me just tell you right now, your reptilian brain will key in and it will make it a lot easier for your viewer. Okay. Then again, yeah, I'm not selling anything, but I just think this is an amazing product. This is the PlexiCam. I don't know if you've seen it, but I'm going to try to I'm not using this webcam right now, but I do have a PlexiCam. It's a PlexiCam holder that goes over my monitor screen. And I can look through it into my slide deck, right? So if I'm giving a presentation that's very slide dependent, right, or data heavy, right, you might consider using a PlexiCam, right, to center your webcam and your viewer, right, in front of your slides, which are always super attractive. And then finally, the thing that we all want to watch and look at when we are Zooming is ourselves in our Zoom mirrors. And so what I recommend is when you are presenting is to figure out, it's to hide your Zoom view. So if we were in a meeting, I think these instructions will work. I'm not sure they'll work in webinar, but if you just Google hide self view, it is a game changer. And I challenge all of my students to join me in classes after hiding their self view. Okay, and then don't forget to smile. I want to see some smiles. I'm looking for some smiles. So when we watch talking heads on television, right, we are used to people who oversmile. That's right. It's a term. It's a real term of art, the oversmile. So I've been doing it, smiling a ton. My cheeks hurt a little bit, right? Think about advertisements that you'll see. Toyota 4Runner, tampons, Greek yogurt, right? We are used to people in boxes over smiling. And as a result, when we see people who are just being normal, right? This is an image of Marshall Mathers, known as Eminem, famous for not smiling in pictures. Someone's photoshopped a grin onto his face, right? What happens when we are just normal humans on Zoom is we start to have this feeling of, is somebody angry with me? Did I miss a memo? Am I somehow not in the in-group? And part of this is because we're dialing down from kind of the over-smiling that we typically see in professional boxes, right, to regular humans that we interact and have meetings with. Okay, number 4, find your light. Not to put anyone on the spot, but I think we've all Zoomed, right, with some version of this Seattle Times reporter who is using images of herself to demonstrate the importance of lighting, right? The reason what we care about lighting is we want people to be able to read our facial expressions, read our mouths. If we're backlit, if we have a light source behind us, right, can't tell what's going on there. I can't tell if she's angry, she's engaged. I can't tell if her eyes are open, right? I can see nothing about her to make a connection. And the second, it's lovely light, natural light, but I'm also distracted by her background. And then finally, here she is in kind of a plain-ish environment, okay? Here's something that may be kind of not something that you might expect. Zoom without overhead lights on. So anytime you're using a video conferencing software, you want to turn off your overhead lights, right? Overhead lights create harsh shadows on our faces, make it difficult to read our expressions, and also give us a sense of I want to say it's like daunting, right? Or a little bit ominous, right? When we see those harsh shadows. The second image here is just the regular ambient light during the day. And the third is what I'm using right now, which is mostly I'm sitting in front of an open window, but I have some accent lighting on my face. All right, so what do? Get a lamp? Yes, I just said that, get a lamp. Everybody go get a lamp, okay? Most of us have them already. I love this lamp from Caltronics, which is lovely, and I actually have one here. And the reason that I like it is it kind of moves all around, and I can change the light on my face and the lighting temperature on my face. And so this is something that you might consider. I see that John has a ring light, and ring lights are great. They are great, and I think can be really helpful. These are other lighting setups I've just gathered from online teachers mostly, right? All of them you'll see it's about kind of light, right? Being able to make connections. We have to see people and make eye contact in order to feel connected. Okay, and now I'm last. Here we go. Here's number 5. Clean up your act, right? And there are a couple ways to do this. We don't want to be this person. I call this zooming with white privilege, this slide, right? I'm a really smart person. You've invited me here because I'm an expert and you want to know what I have to say, but I didn't think about how my background, right, was going to distract from my message. So our point should be to keep the focus on our voices, right, on our faces and our message, and not to get caught up in our backgrounds, which is why I'm using a virtual background today. So there are 2 ways to do this. One, use a virtual background, but not any virtual background will do. You must use a physical green screen. So I'm using one right now. I'll wag my green screen. There's, you can see my real life behind my green screen. This one's attached to my chair. Right? That allows me not to melt into my background, right? Because if you're melting, no one's focusing, right? We're just waiting to see where you go. Be very thoughtful about, I love your green screen, John. What I would be very thoughtful about is what visible noise you're introducing into your frame, okay? So if you are using something that's really catchy, then you may be competing and you want the focus, right? You want the focus typically to be right here. Right? Option 2, stage your Zoom room, right? Decide what it is that you want to share about your background, right? And put it together. And I will just say Room Writer here it's right on the money. 3 frames, right? Will take you out. Oh my gosh, we're right on the second. I think I'm going to be okay. I think I've got about 45 seconds to go. If you can, shoot into a corner. right? So here's we have one reporter who's sitting in front of a bookshelf, right? Very smart. I'm the smart bookshelf person, right? But notice when the congressman shoots into the corner, you get a sense of depth, right? Right? Minimize motion, people walking behind you, flags fluttering, virtual backgrounds with crashing waves. Any of those things will detract from your message, right? In this case, there's a little Cocker Spaniel settling in, right? Right? Avoid doors. Doors are like it's like Zoom whack-a-mole, right? It's like waiting, right? And actually, we get anxious the more doors that are visible in a video conference, right? We're waiting to see what's going to happen, right? And then finally, and this is just key, we've never seen Rachel Maddow's studio ceiling. TV studios don't have ceilings. So once you've got your kind of setup, what you want to do is tilt, like Congressman Clyburn has done right here, tilt that camera and so you do not see any ceiling. And then finally, screen test your shot, right? Test everything. I hope this was helpful. And it's great to be here. Have a wonderful day.
That was fantastic. Thank you, Elisabeth. All right, our final presentation in this cluster is Game Changer Tips to help you sustain student engagement. Pat and Jason, take it away.
Thank you. I'm so self-conscious now of my view and what everyone's looking at. So I hope it looks good, Elisabeth. I hope it looks good. So I have 3 screens, so I'll be looking at different spots, Elisabeth, at different times. I just want to say that out loud. So Jason can introduce himself in a minute. I am an instructional designer at Turo Law. And Jason, you want to say?
Hi, I'm the Executive Director, Master of Legal Studies program at UCLA School of Law.
And what we want to do first, before we even taint you with our ideas, is we're hoping to get some chat going. So if you could, in your chat, talk about what do you know about student engagement? When you see students, what do you see that makes you think that they're engaged? And this can be in Zoom, this can be face-to-face in the classroom, this can be asynchronous, it can be any type of environment you want. Throw out some important ideas or thoughts behind what you think of when you see student engagement. And I'm gonna look at the chats here. Laughter, participating. I'm reading very quickly. Oh my God, you guys are fast typers. Nodding, comments, asking chats, questions, engagement in polls, eye contact, contributing to the conversation. Looks like they're taking notes. Just seeing what I'm missing here. Not looking at their phones or multitasking in general, I suppose. Eye contact, again, contact that extends the conversation, laughs at my jokes, because that's one we're all looking for, is to feel engaged, that we're entertaining. Camera on, typing, eyebrows above the face mask in person. Oh yeah, right. So when you're in person, when you have the face mask, looking at their facial expressions, you can't see their mouth. So yeah, you got to look at eyebrows and other ways of making contact. Narrowing eye contact. So you keep sending them, keep typing them in. I'm trying to be very conscious of the time, so I'm just going to move on a little bit. Jason and I put together what we think of when, and you mentioned a lot of these, what we think of. And Jason, why don't you go ahead with the first part?
Yes, and several of these that I saw mentioned there in the chat is seeing them pay attention. So whether that be through eye contact or whatnot, and seeing them physically taking notes or reading critically and highlighting, maybe see them actively listening, ask questions and responding to questions. So these are some of the ways that we can see and notice people engaging.
So if we take a look at some of the other items on here, again, for all the different components of learning, we have folks that are organized, they participate in activity, they interact with other students in gestures and moving. Movement is a big one, and movement can be something that is extremely hard for people to see with masks on, but in the Zoom environment and the face-to-face environment without masks, it's easy to see movement. Movement's a little bit harder to see in the asynchronous environment, but there's other ways of seeing movement that we have to pay attention to. You already had the laugh, crying, the reaction components. And then do you want to talk about the assessment part?
Yeah, absolutely. And so there's some great ways to see if people are engaging, not just when you're live with them, but then afterwards also potentially if you see strong assessment performance and see that they've engaged with materials and really taken an approach with active learning. And you can see if they write well and have engaged with materials through their writing.
So the last box that you see here is my own little brainchild. I am super conscientious all the time of learning objectives. And so when I think of what I'm looking for students, I'm always thinking of different verbs, action verbs. So I think of these kinds of verbs that can be around a variety of different things. So creating, problem solving, moving, evaluating, exploring, presenting. These are just engaging action verbs that you would use in objectives or to create some mastery level of understanding. And so when I think of these verbs, I think of other things that students are doing that really show that they're engaged in the program or in your course. So what Jason and I put together, now that we talked about student engagement, thinking about how students are engaged, and again, in a variety of different formats, what are some ways that we can keep them engaged? So the biggest component is how to get them involved and get them to take the ownership of the course and get them involved in the course. But how do you maintain that throughout the semester? And this is a long problem and a long concern for faculty in a variety of environments. It's not just the pandemic that we had to deal with this, it's pre-pandemic. It's going to be post-pandemic. This has been a long time conversation in higher education as far as we know. A lot of the things we're going to show you today are very simple. You might have to do them already, or they might be something that maybe you thought of doing, but you're not sure how to do. So we're going to walk you through them. They're based on 3 ideas. It's multimodal teaching, faculty presence, and the idea of regular faculty and student communication. And I do purposely have the slideshow not in slideshow mode because I do want you to see some of the different pieces in here, even our notes, because there's some things I put in the notes that might have, again, because of the lack of time, some things you might want to take a look at. So let's start with multimodal teaching. Multimodal teaching, if you're not familiar with it, is multiple forms of providing the content and utilizing all the different senses. In our presentation today, in our opening key speaker, they talked about universal design. And universal design, this is getting at that component. How do you create an environment that appeals to everybody, to all the senses, so that you're engaging them? And one way to do that is to create multimodal modes of teaching. So creating a simulation, and this can be an electronic simulation, one that you create using crazy technology. Maybe you use some kind of 3D technology to create a simulation where students are walking through it. Or you can create a case study or a problem study where you're assigning people to different components. Any simulation that you can create is going to get the students more involved. So a simulation is a very great way, it's a great way to get students involved. One that you're all, I assume, very familiar with is creating groups. Creating groups for learning, for projects, for peers to interconnect, and partners. And this is, again, a very simple one might use regularly in your classroom, but it's more difficult as you become online to create groups, but very easy to do. This is a non-risky thing to do, is to create groups. And lastly, the use, for my conversation, the use of video and audio. And video and audio is just another way of producing your content and creative ways of producing your content. Again, you want to think about your 5 senses. So if you provided them a reading or provided them a way to get at the content in one way, you want to think about how can you display it, change it, so that you're using video or audio. And as you know, you can create your own video and audio, or you can find something that already exists. The presentation today showed how you take basically a variety of different video clips, original, things already out there, and making a compilation of videos. So there's so many different ways you can chop up video and audio to create multiple modes of learning.
And another way that was mentioned in the previous presentation by Elisabeth, she was saying that when you do a Zoom presentation, that it's best every 8 minutes or so to kind of mix up the visual so you can really capture their attention again. Well, the same concept applies over the course of a 13-week semester as far as how you're delivering instruction. So this is regardless if you're in person, online, remote, whatever the format is, kind of mixing up the modality of teaching at times while keeping the students comfortable can be a very effective way to keep students engaged throughout a long course of a semester. One of my favorite ways to do that is by flipping the classroom. And so maybe you've heard of this, or maybe you've tried it even in your classes. But one way that I have found particularly effective is whenever there's materials, if I'm doing live sessions, whether online or in person, is there something that I find myself just talking? Am I just talking and delivering information? And I think this can be done differently. And so my favorite thing to do is to provide recordings to the students, in advance to view anything that might be kind of lecture-y in that sense. That allows the students to view it on their time and their manner, at their speed, rewatch it, kind of comprehend it, and pair it with questions, pair it with problem sets that's based on that, and have them bring the problem sets that they've already completed to the class. And now your class session, instead of being just lecturing, providing information, and maybe engaging in limited Socratic method, can instead be actively engaging in the materials and the problems and learning through that, applying the information. Maybe you can have them come in, send them into breakout rooms for 5 minutes, then have them come back and randomly call on a group to answer the questions. And now sometimes you can mix this in, maybe do it a few times in a semester, maybe try it just once and see how it works for you. I find that very engaging to try that in your live environment, wherever that might be. Another thing is when the students have reading, well, how do you know that the students are reading and that they're engaging with the materials that you want them to prepare in advance? I know if I'm doing a Socratic method in a class, well, maybe I'll call on like a few of the students, but I'm not going to call on 100% of the students every time. Well, online, if you instead do reading checks, concept checks, those types of quizzes and things that engage 100% of the students 100% of the time in the online environment, then they can be engaged on a much more frequent level, including using discussion forums for these key topics. And then one last thing that's kind of an idea I actually did many years ago in an online class is creating a class wiki, and having students kind of on particular, maybe it's a particular subject in your class that is maybe new and developing, and the students can kind of work together to build this kind of information scaffold of materials that they put together. And in fact, using it, and sometimes I even in the past I've looked at just even Wikipedia pages that are out there and say, hey, let's update this Wikipedia page that's on a subject that's within my class thing, and kind of add to the intellectual community of the world and help people out type things. So I think there's a lot of ways to kind of engage students that way with materials in kind of different ways. So back to you, Patty.
I don't know how many of you are familiar with the concept of a web quest. Research, yes, but probably not web quest. A web quest is like a scavenger hunt on the web. It's a very useful tool, and people probably use it all the time but don't know the name of it. And what you do is basically have the students go out into the world of the web and find research, data, studies, case studies. They can find TV shows, newscasts, anything that's going on in the world that relates to the topic, and bring it back to the classroom. These are things that can be done in the class because everyone's got some technology, so it can be done in real time. It could be done beforehand, so you can do this as a flipped environment. It's like a homework thing that they can do. And they can do it in a variety of different ways. You can have them post the information, you can have them meet in groups. It's a way for them to collect information. So web quests are huge. You can think of it as a scavenger hunt on the web. And there's this whole concept of now, once they gather this stuff, what do they do with it? And having students become the teachers of the content is an excellent way to sort of switch their role and have them become engaged. So it's a big push towards engagement when you switch the role. So think web quests, having them teach what they're finding, or working in groups and bringing all this information together. So those are just a few. And again, due to time, we put together this summary of, I don't know if many of you are familiar with this 1991 article, certainly look it up, but we sort of crunched it out for you and put things into a clear way to kind of understand the other different things you can do. And this is based on risk. So risk meaning, are you going to be really embarrassed doing this thing? Or is it going to be high stakes for you? Is the technology going to completely fail? You know, what are you going to do with this stuff? And so we ranked it according to low risk and high risk. And so you can kind of look through and see if you want something to be active and high risk. Those are the kinds of things you can do. And high active, but low risk, and low risk, low active, high risk, and low active, low risk. Little tongue twister there. I live a lot when I'm working with faculty with the top 2 categories. I'm always looking for high active learning, and anything in the high risk, low risk seems fine to me for a professor. So when I work with a professor, I give them examples. I kind of try to make sure they have almost like a Chinese menu of things to choose from. Depending on what they're trying to do, I give them a variety of things, and they can kind of sort of pick the ones that are going to work for that topic, for that teaching style, for that, however it is they want the student to master that information. I kind of stay away from the low active components at the bottom, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't. Again, this is just how I sort of live and breathe when I'm working with a professor. But definitely take a picture of this, you know, get a copy of this, rewatch it in the video. These are all little quick tricks for you to take a look at. Faculty presence.
Yeah, definitely. So I think when you're looking to engage the students, and so I think this is particularly talking about when you're teaching in online or remote environments, because if you're in person, your faculty presence is pretty clear and obvious. You know, you're standing right there with them every week. But when you're teaching online, and in some sense, if remote as well, how can you establish a consistent faculty presence to keep the students engaged? And so here's some tips to do that over the course of a semester to really kind of reel them back in if anyone is kind of you know, getting off and becoming disengaged with it. So one is really spending some time to build a community in your classroom. And one thing that I love to do right at the front of every class is to, in the discussion forums, provide a forum for everyone to kind of get to know each other and say, what are they, you know, maybe specifically, what are they interested in this particular class? Then, and also then tell about them. So maybe fun facts, or call out some specific questions to them to each answer, and ask them to do it in a video format responding. I find it very interesting to look through and watch little couple-minute introductions of each of their students saying who they are and why they're here, why are they taking your class, and I find it fascinating. It's also a great way for them to introduce each other, and I do the same. I kind of tell them about kind of what makes me tick as well as a person, so they can get to know me a little bit more right up front at the beginning of the class. Another thing to establish faculty presence is to, you know, giving feedback very regularly and often. And I suggest to have regular assessments and to try to get that feedback and grades back within 3 days of a due date of an assignment. And a lot of people think, you know, forget that, you know, that's impossible. But if you can do that, that's in the online format particularly, that can be a particularly effective way to keep people engaged. And providing one thing, the online environment is sometimes people, with all the clicking and moving around, people can kind of get lost in where they are at in the class at times and where they're at within the information. And so thus creating weekly activity checklists inside the LMS can be very effective, keep students on track with knowing what they need to do each and every week so they can go and check off that list. And one last thing that I'll talk about briefly is announcements each week and how that can work. I do suggest having at least 2 announcements each week in your online classes, right there kicking off the week, and then 1 midweek. But I'm going to give you here my kind of 5 tips for success in making announcements. So the temptation is just, you know, put in a few words, say, hey, great to see you. This week we're doing this, and send, you know. But what I have found very effective, and I've kind of evolved over time, is making video announcements sent by me each week. And I have, you know, 5 tips on how to make a great video announcement. I try to do one usually once a week or 2 out of 3 weeks type thing. And the first tip is to record somewhere interesting. So why should I just make my recording right here with my, you know, Zoom background or with my room? Go to somewhere, engage the students in that manner. if they're remote, if they're not on campus, then it might be interesting for you to go next to, a landmark on campus and do the recording there, or, to a beach or something. We're here in Los Angeles, and so that's something that I would like to do, but make it interesting where you're at. Secondly is when you make recorded lectures, like maybe for flipping the classroom or whatnot, you don't want to make time references in those, because then they become stale, such as tomorrow this case is going to be decided. Well, then, when they see it, it's no longer tomorrow, and that's no good. But in this, on the other hand, my tip number 2 is make a time reference in your announcement, because you do want it to be fresh. Reference that it was Memorial Day, reference that sometime, so that they know you're making this now and that it wasn't canned, weeks ago type thing. The third is call out specific students in a good way, and say that, in the discussion forums, I saw that, this person was really engaged in really interesting ideas, and I loved how that person responded and engaged and said these things, and compliment some people in some ways that are public. And that particularly discussion forums, I think, are great with this. It really is amazing how students can kind of click once they see that, once they hear that now they feel really pulled in and engaged with you as the professor and the class. Then my fourth suggestion for a video announcement is to recap where you've been. So the last week or two, what have you learned? Where have you come to get to where you are today? And then preview what's to come. And how does that what's to come fit into the scaffolding maybe that was established to the learning before? And so I think that is this is a great opportunity to do that each and every week. And then 5 is to give that checklist of items for that week. So maybe make sure you post the discussion forums by Wednesday this week. I can't wait to see your assignment on this submitted Sunday. Here's a couple tips on that assignment. And that's that. Those are my 5 tips. That's kind of the formula that I try to follow with each of my weekly video announcements. And I'll give you a 6th bonus one. And my 6th bonus one is don't be perfect. And what I mean by that is, when you do recorded lectures, I think it's totally great to, edit and make it just how you want. But with these, if I'm videoing, from my iPhone, it's meant to be spur of the moment. It's meant to be that I'm here with you now type thing. And if I'm talking with you face to face, if I mess up a word or two, well, that's okay. That's how we can engage with them in that way. And so thus, if you totally say something that's terrible, of course, re-record it. But I would say don't worry about little things on these video announcements. It's not meant to be perfect. But anyway, so those are some tips for me as far as how to make successful weekly video announcements.
And what those tips actually do is it's a psychological appeal. So there's a whole psychology there that is appealing to the students, that gets them to take ownership of continually learning the content. So I just wanted to piggyback off what Jason's saying. I know we really don't have time. I know, John. There's the last slide that's talking about the communication between student and faculty. Again, you can read through those, and that will end our presentation. So, so that's the last slide. The other one just shows who we are. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you, Jason. We have time for a few questions because our next break doesn't have any presentations whatsoever. I see Elisabeth has already been answering questions in the Q&A. And the staff have been feeding me, and I've been writing down some questions. So here, I've got a question for Mike and his folks. I thought the most interesting comment from the student was, practicing remotely. It's not all bad. I mean, that was a very qualified sort of endorsement. But then I think it was Rana who said, remote work is more controllable. I've heard the problem that with remote work, you feel like you're always working. You're always available. They can always email you. They can always Slack you or something like that. I mean, are we getting smarter about, what's the word, disciplining ourselves to turn off the phone or to stop working and not be available? Or is it going to always be a fight with type A bosses and hard charging, senior partners?
That's a great question, John. And by the way, thanks for inviting me. This was really great. It was wonderful to see these other presentations and just as the other presenters said, of course, get incredibly self-conscious about my own background. and spacing.
Too many doors.
I know, right? I'm like, oh man, I've got a door and a mirror. Like, what am I doing back here? This is it's a total nightmare. No, it's fine. But yeah, so that blew my mind. Absolutely, right? Like when I, because these are 4 first-year associates at big firms, and like scheduling that was very difficult given their schedules, and it was touch and go until the moment we filmed, and they said, yeah, it's really not that bad, and I was like, not that bad. That is amazing. And but they said, yeah, it's a little bit like studying for the bar and things like that, where we're still sort of setting our own schedules, and that skill that we picked up as working, being remote law students in 3L and then studying for the bar, that sort of mountain to climb, we've sort of applied it here. Obviously, you're absolutely right. Like, so much of it depends on who you're working with and whether or not they respect those boundaries. But yeah, I mean, I think that's something that I took from that conversation that I want to focus more on in clinical supervision is sort of establishing and maintaining those boundaries with students as well. So hopefully that's something that we carry back with this, because you're right. Like, if everything is closed, then there's sort of no reason why you can't respond at 10:30 on a Tuesday to your bosses. It's not like you're going to be out doing stuff, but right, there just needs to be the recognition that what you do in your house at 10:30 on a Tuesday, if you're taking time to not work, that's just as important as if you're somewhere where you can't respond. And so hopefully that's a norm that's changing. It sounded like it. Really, I was rather pleasantly surprised to hear that.
Cool. So Paul asks, this is a perennial question, probably more for Pat and Jason. I found both as a student and a professor, it's difficult to have students engage in external discussion boards without requiring it part of the grade. How do you get engagement without the roteness of it all?
Yeah, I guess I would start by saying, why not grade it? I guess that would be my first. Grade it. You don't have to grade it rigorously. It could be a complete incomplete kind of thing that goes towards participation. It could be 1 point. But I do think our students recognize, and we understand as law students, they want the recognition for participating in something in the course. So I guess my first comment would be, go ahead and grade it. How to get them to, if it's not graded, what do you do? What I kind of do is, again, what Jason talked about in the beginning, when he talked about that introduction, that really is the heart of a discussion board. That introduction that you make as a professor, where you talk about not only yourself and the content that you're teaching and the class, but also put your personality into it and your heart into it and some feeling. I know it's very touchy-feely, but put some background about it, maybe talk about your kids, maybe talk about whatever it is. But what you're doing is psychologically connecting yourself to the students, and they will do the same in their discussion board. And then that pattern will follow throughout. Yeah, it'll be spiral. Elizabeth, I love you, Elizabeth. I mean, I really do.
I've heard discussion boards described as a garden. You have to put the seeds in, which is what this is about and why we're doing it. Then you got to water it, and you got to fertilize it, and you got to weed it. You got to stop the bad part, the discussions going off the rails, or the crap being, or the politics falling into it, stuff like that.
Yeah.
The garden.
One thing that I've done in the discussion forums too, to kind of engage people, is to have some is to role play in the discussion forums, and specific prompts based on role playing. So first, start off by saying that that you are the client. Ask questions based on this prompt, and then have them assigned specifically to another person to ask questions to that other person. And then that other student in the class then is now the lawyer, and they need to respond with their legal response to the client questions. And so I think there's a lot of ways to engage the students in discussion forums.
And that is a type of simulation as well, just to go back to that simulation comment. The simulation doesn't always have to be you creating a video with different characters and cartoons and a simulation. It can be like a discussion board simulation.
Right, because you're going to be interacting with an awful lot of your clients on email or text messaging. As insecure as that is for legal advice, it's going to happen, I imagine. Not a lot of other questions coming in. I got one. This is the curmudgeon in me. Look, we've been able to remotely practice or talk to people for 100 years on telephones. Now all of a sudden we can do it on video, and it's like everything's changed. Like, haven't lawyers been practicing? You know, they don't always bring their clients into their office. You don't. You know, why are things so different now? Is it the internet? Is it the immediacy of being able to see the face? Is it the pandemic that's thrust us all into this online environment? I don't know. I'm going to throw that out that way. Anybody can pick that up.
I'm not going to touch that. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer, so I will let someone else pick that conversation up. Maybe Michael. You seem lawyer-y.
Hi. Oh yeah, I'm like so lawyery. So before I did this job, I worked in-house at a tech company, negotiating tech contracts, and I did that job for 2 years, and I never met any of our customers, never once. So it was all speakerphone, and I don't know if I ever did a video chat. It was all talking through long contracts on speakerphone. And that was just the way that we did it. And, you know, we did that with our internal clients in a conference room. We would hit the mute button every so often, you know, strategically and hopefully successfully to talk amongst ourselves, and then come back and negotiate contracts. And the contracts were all on our own computers, the local copies that we were making our own notes in. So that was the way we did it. There were remarkable inefficiencies that we didn't really appreciate at the time that we now see. And I think that's where the real change comes from, right? Like, if I were to go back to that job and do that job, I would do it a little bit differently, right? I would not necessarily want to do it completely over speakerphone, but there were some advantages to that, obviously, right? Like, it's very hard in a Zoom call for, say, Jason and I to suddenly have a side conversation that's not chat, right? Because it'll look like I'm typing. And so that there is a benefit to that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm looking at my phone, right? That being said, you know, what we do in the clinic, right? We have a seminar which was on Zoom, and then we have client representation of live client entrepreneurs. And that aspect was really easy because our clients were really happy to just use this technology. Of course, realizing that there are barriers to that technology that are important for us to appreciate. But our clients generally, like, the representation part was better for them because they didn't have to come to the law school to talk to their student counselors. They could just do it online too. So where I saw the rubber hit the road in a way that I thought was truly meaningful was the way to collaboratively draft contracts and agreements and things like that, to do that stuff live. I thought that was marvelous, and that was something that that we saw in seminar really worked, and it was something that we saw in practice really worked. So I would take that back if I went back to my lawyer job, and at least try it every so often in a way that I think would be helpful and save time and money, hopefully. But sort of to your point, sometimes the old ways do work and will work again. But yeah.
Yeah, let's not forget, this is also a phone, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, man. All right, one last question was, what from the pandemic or this online learning and remote work from home can we take back to the classroom and use there?
I'm happy to chime in on that. I'm actually putting together right now workshops for our faculty so that they don't lose what they've gained, and how do they bring that back to the now face-to-face environment. So I'm breaking it down into 3 categories. Feel free to steal it. I can even record them and send them to you, John, and you can send them to anybody you wish. So the one workshop is how to teach with your traditional face-to-face classroom, but now make it web enhanced. So making sure you are using the technology you learn in your learning management system and other technology you use, and how do you pair that with the traditional to web enhance it. The second one is flipping your classroom, going to what Jason said. So flipping, how do you make your classroom inside out? And I'm not suggesting that faculty do their entire course, though, for starters. I want them to take one topic, 1 week, or one hard area that students struggle with, and I want them to flip that first. That would be for the fall, for them to flip one section. And the third one is the 1/3 stuff, right? So we can all take 1/3 of our course and, make it asynchronous, but I want them to pedagogically, thoughtfully do that and have a reason to do that. So the workshop is how to how to make 1/3 of your course asynchronous, but how to do it in a pedagogically sound way. So those are our 3 main workshops we're going to be offering starting the end of July throughout the entire semester for our faculty. And like I said, I can record them if you want and share them if you wish. They'll be general enough. So that's what I got.
Cool. All right. Thank you all. That was a fantastic collection of presentations. I thought it held together pretty good. And I really appreciate you coming and speaking. Folks, we're a little bit past time, but that's okay. We're into our hour break. Then we'll be back at 5 o'clock for the last session of the day. And thank you again, and see you all in a little bit.
Aloha.
Thanks so much.
Aloha.